I'm Colin Jackson, former hurdler. At the height of my career, I was lucky enough to reach the top of British sport. I won an Olympic medal and was world champion. But throughout my sporting career, I was harbouring a secret. An eating disorder I now believe started as anorexia, later developing into bulimia. And I'm not the only one in sport to have gone through this.
The doctor sat me down and she was like, Rebecca, you are dying.
Tonight on Panorama, I want to understand why so many elite athletes seem to struggle with their eating.
A lot more work has to be done before, ultimately, I think we have a system which really does get the best out of our athletes without brutalising them.
There's a lot of athletes who still aren't comfortable about speaking out. We need to address why not.
To get in the mindset of an elite athlete, you've really got to understand obsession. But that same obsession to succeed can have a really dark side. To be successful in an elite sport, you have to have a tough training regime, alongside exercise that often includes a strict diet, where food intake is carefully monitored to maximise performance. Between 1993 and the early 2000s, my drive to run faster led me to believe I needed to be lighter too. I was at the peak of my career. The only thing that I thought mattered was winning and setting world records. This intense focus on exercise and controlled eating led to damaging behaviours. At the time, I was restricting myself to a dangerously small amount of food. Around a quarter of what I now know was needed to fuel my training. I really believed that I had to be as skinny as I possibly could to succeed. But actually, it wasn't helping me win. It was damaging both my body and my career. And I know from personal experience that eating disorders like anorexia and bulimia are a problem across many more sports. People with anorexia try to keep their weight as low as possible by not eating enough food, exercising too much, or both. People who have bulimia go through periods where they eat a lot of food in a short amount of time and then make themselves sick or use laxatives. Over-exercising can be a symptom too, one that is often missed. For my mum, Angela, and my sister, Suzanne, it must have been impossible. On the one hand, watching me win medals, whilst on the other, I was physically fading away. At any stage did you think, what is happening to this boy?
After the World Championship, because you said to me, when I said, look at this, Colin, look at this picture, and you said, Mum, I am skinny, aren't I?
So I remember the headline in the New York Times at the time is saying that the skinny Brit has broken, yes. And I was like...
Oh, they actually said
a little Brit, yeah.
I ended up having that sense of, OK, if I eat too much, if I binge with food, I've got to throw up. If I've got to be there, I've got to throw up.
It moved into being
bulimic tendencies. Because I was winning, because I was running faster and breaking records, the only thing I put that down to was keeping slim and weight loss. But the eating disorder didn't just impact my weight, it had other effects too. You could never sleep. I could never sleep. So you were always awake, and even though you had no energy, really no energy, you couldn't rest.
It's very disturbing actually, because I think young people who are doing that and they don't have the level of concern around them, I think it must be, well, it could be life-threatening. And that's no joke.
For my family, it was clearly terrifying to see the damage I was doing. For me, it was exhausting. I was in a constant battle with myself. It's something I didn't talk about with anyone. There has been very little research in this area, but the largest study to date suggests that elite athletes are far more likely than the rest of the population to develop an eating disorder. 20% of female and 8% of male athletes had an eating disorder. That's 2 times higher in women and 16 times higher in men than the wider population. And the damage eating disorders do can be massive. It can affect the hair, teeth, skin, and digestive system. The cardiovascular system can suffer too. At their worst, eating disorders like anorexia can be deadly. Growing up, Rebecca Quinlan dreamed of becoming a professional runner. As a teenager, she had already started to restrict what she ate, believing it would improve her performance in local running championships.
I think there is a general culture in particularly track and field athletics that, you know, weight loss is good, weight loss will enhance your performance. I'd hide some of my breakfast, I'd try and give away my lunch or throw it away at school. Everyone around me just looked so much thinner than I felt, and I just thought, well, I had a dream of becoming a professional athlete. I really wanted to run for Great Britain when I was older, and I just thought, if I want to achieve my dream, I need to be thinner. I need to have the figure of an athlete.
Over time, Rebecca's battle with restrictive eating and exercise escalated.
I went to university to do sports science. That's where the eating disorder really started to kick in. So I started to restrict even more. I started to exercise a lot more, so I'd go out for extra walks. And I started to find that my world was becoming increasingly dominated by food.
Did nobody see you and say, come on, Rebecca, you look really painfully thin?
As part of my course, I had swimming lessons every week. And so I had lost a lot of weight, and it would have been visible to the swimming teacher, seeing me in a swimming costume every single week, that I'd gone from virtually a normal weight to severely underweight, but nothing was ever said.
Many people with an eating disorder find it difficult to acknowledge the problem and don't ask for help. The anxiety Rebecca felt over food and exercise meant that she didn't openly admit to her problem. It took an intervention from her university friends to finally make the difference.
The eating disorder was very fixed in my head. I had gone past the point of no return, really. I couldn't train anymore. I was struggling to walk, let alone run. My friends called my parents saying, look, we're really worried, and my parents came to collect me and took me home.
What happened from there on in?
My parents were refusing to take me back to university unless I went to the doctor, so I felt like I had no choice.
The doctor diagnosed Rebecca with anorexia nervosa. It's clear from shocking photos taken during her time in treatment that the condition had had an extreme impact on her body.
The doctor sat me down and she was like, Rebecca, you are dying. You will die if you don't get help immediately. And she said my kidneys, liver and my heart were failing.
Have you got any lasting effects from that period in time?
So I have osteoporosis now, which is incurable. I still don't have a period even though I've regained the weight.
Rather than helping her to success, Rebecca's eating disorder actually destroyed her career.
It started out so innocently, just trying to lose weight for me to achieve my dream of becoming a professional athlete. I didn't realise that I couldn't just switch it off. I feel sad now to think that my dream got overtaken by the eating disorder.
After years of treatment, she is now running in amateur races, but Rebecca will never compete professionally. These issues extend beyond athletics. Following the triumph of the British Olympic cycling teams in 2012, cycling's become massively popular, with more than 6.3 million people riding for sport or leisure in 2019, many of them young. In 2018, Jake Wright joined the Zappi race team. It's a privately run cycling team registered in the UK but training in Spain and Italy, and with a reputation of getting really strong results at races across Europe. Before he joined, Jake signed a contract agreeing to live in a house with his teammates where manager and coach Flavio Zappi would provide all the food. He was sent a meal plan showing the type of things he could expect to eat, but there were almost no details on the quantities.
There you go. How are you, boys? On the limit. I want my boys to make us a big pro.
This glitzy promotional video promises a tough regime for the team.
Every morning, he'd weigh us all individually in our boxes. And then from there, he'd set you like a target weight. So I came in January at like 63 kilo, and he was like, right, 60 for you is your sort of number.
You're quite light already.
Yeah, I was already quite light.
But Jake says he didn't have an issue with his weight and diet before joining the Zappi team.
I paid attention to my eating because I was an athlete. I didn't obsess over it. I weighed myself probably more than your average kid, but not in a way of I need to get down to this weight. It was more in a way of tracking.
After joining the team, Jake says he had concerns about the amount of food Flavio Zappi bought for members to cook for each other and take on training rides.
It was very restrictive on carbohydrates and fueling in general. But no matter what the training we had, like the food would be given on a 2-hour ride would be the same as what we were given on a 5-hour ride.
Oh, okay.
So the nutrition wasn't really geared to the training we were doing. So I'd lost weight quite fast.
Flavio Zappi told Panorama that a variety of healthy and appropriate food is always available and athletes can choose how much or little to eat. But Jake says he and his fellow teammates would sometimes resort to what felt like drastic action to get more food.
Any opportunity where the manager wasn't here, we'd sneak off to a supermarket, and people would hide it in different places. So we wouldn't really risk having it in the house, because I wouldn't anyway, because he would look through our bags.
Flavio Zappi told Panorama he wouldn't go through bags, but accepted that certain foods may be confiscated. So people will be thinking, if you belong to this team, they're not keeping you there like you're in prison. So if you felt like you were not able to do what you want to do, to eat well, etc., why do you hang around?
It didn't feel like I could run away. I felt like I was trapped on the team, to be honest. I felt like if I went home, then he's cracked me then. The environment of the team was to lose weight, and the advice was always to go faster, be lighter, not train more, is always eat less. I think the environment of the team definitely encouraged me to eat that way.
Flavio Zappi confirmed that he sometimes advises athletes to reduce their body fat, but added that many increase their weight during training. After 10 months, Jake left the team and sought help. His doctor diagnosed a condition normally associated with disordered eating and exercise dependency, a condition that can affect things like bone health and immunity.
I got really ill because my body was on the limit. I met a dietitian who wanted to do some testing to see what sort of state my body was in. So I did a scan.
What did the scan entail?
You'd lay down on a flatbed and a machine would pass over you, and it would it could look inside you sort of like by an X-ray and separate your lean body mass to your bone tissue and your organs and stuff like that. So it could tell you what percentage body fat you've got, how strong your bones are, your bone mineral density, and that's what they wanted to look at. And it said mild risk of osteoporosis, like now. I was only 20, 19. So I was like, my bones were quite weak for my age. I realised that my body had started to shut down, really.
Flavio Zappi also told Panorama that the team's nutritional plans are regularly verified by leading doctors and nutritionists involved in the sport at the highest level, and the nutrition is specifically tailored to the training. But he said that when athletes cook for themselves, they decide what and how much to eat. He added that through his years of training, he has learned that frequent weight checks can pick up overtraining, undertraining, flag concerning weight gain or loss, and indicate potential sickness. Rachel Morris is a former Paralympian and has competed at an elite level in both cycling and rowing, winning gold in the 2008 and 2016 Games. She was first diagnosed with anorexia when she was 18, which later developed into bulimia. When she started her Paralympic sporting career, she says she was very honest with her coaches about her difficulties with food.
I had said to them at the beginning that I knew the times I'm going to struggle with it.
In the run-up to the Rio Games, training with the GB Paralympic rowing team, Rachel says she was so worried about her eating that she went to see a member of staff to ask for help. Rachel says she was shocked by the response. She says that she was told she was a nutter.
The biggest thing I took out of it was that I was the weakest link in the team, and I was the one that, if I cracked, I was going to be the one that let the whole team down.
So you're going into the biggest competition of your life in that sense, in this sport, and the pressure's on for you to win a gold medal. They understand that you're coming in with a problem, and the response you got was you're a nutter and you're the weakest link in the team.
Yeah, those comments are not throwaway comments.
British Rowing denied that anybody was called a nutter and told Panorama there were no weak links on the Paralympic team. Rachel says she trained alongside other GB rowing teams where members sometimes went to great lengths to hit weight goals so they could compete.
You've got the athletes who don't make their weight and so are in a room the morning before they get weighed, a hotel room where you've got indoor rowing machines inside with a heater on and then with, you know, black bin liners over you, and that's acceptable to sweat off that weight to be able to drop that last half kilogram, whatever it is, to be able to meet the weight for your race. To me, that's just an eating disorder factory.
And a coach would possibly be coming to the room just to make sure that they were going to make the rows.
They know that, yeah, absolutely, they're standing there. It's part of the hotel booking.
So not making that weight in that particular way, could that encourage eating disorders, you feel?
I strongly believe that absolutely it can.
So at your training centre there, how prevalent in your opinion was eating disorders?
I think that there are a serious number of athletes who are either struggling with disordered eating or a specific eating disorder.
So you definitely weren't on your own?
No.
British Rowing told Panorama they take all aspects of athletes' health and welfare very seriously. They say they believe that currently none of the athletes in their senior squads have declared or known eating disorders and cannot categorically deny the anecdote about bin liners, as an athlete may have done this without informing staff or coaches. So how do you balance sporting success with the need to protect both the physical and mental health and strength of athletes? One country that believes they might just have found the answer is Norway. Since 2015, athletes representing Norway in 4 major sporting disciplines, including athletics, must obtain a health certificate before they're allowed to compete internationally.
You can also do the weight, you can just stand on the...
A doctor will measure whether an athlete's weight and height puts them in the underweight category on the body mass index scale and run a series of tests to check for things like bone density. They will only be allowed to compete if the doctors believe they are a healthy weight and do not have an eating disorder. If you clinically found that there was an eating disorder, they would just definitely be off the team.
You get a red light, then you're out of the team. But it's important to understand that we take care of the athletes as well. But eating disorder is a red light.
One of the groups that help advocate for the new rules is Sunidrett, or Healthy Sports. Its director is Marianne Strand-Utneisse.
Education is good, but education alone is not enough. You need a professional system to actually take care of the athletes, and you need a doctor to say, stop if it's going wrong. They are taken good care of by their health team, and they get a treatment plan, and they have close follow-up, and the aim is to get the athlete very quickly back to normal health and to be able to train and compete as normal. We had a case recently, last year actually, with a famous Norwegian cross-country skier, and she got a red light and were out for about 3 weeks, and she's now back and competing and are healthy enough to compete.
Do you think this has an effect on the number of eating disorders here in Norway in sport?
Absolutely. We've been talking to a lot of athletes themselves that tell they, if it hadn't been for the guidelines, they wouldn't have addressed their problems. So we know that this has an effect. I think the reason why Norway has come so far is because this was an expressed need from the sport itself. It was actually parents and coaches at grassroots levels that went to their federations and said, this is a problem. We need a preventive system to work with this and to deal with athletes and unhealthy sport environments when it comes to food and weight and performance.
The guidelines currently only apply at an elite international level.
Oh, I missed one.
But there are signs that they are already having a positive effect on the next generation.
It's great to focus on the athlete's health instead of the results, because I think the results will come later if we focus on the good health we have.
But so far, no other country has implemented the Norwegian system into rules for their own international teams. We asked the English Institute of Sport, who provides support services to British Olympic and Paralympic sports, if they would consider adopting the Norwegian health certificate system. They told us that their individual approach to working with an athlete on a more personal basis is a more suitable approach to providing support, and said just under 1% of recent referrals under the athlete medical scheme were for eating disorders, but noted that this figure only shows part of the picture. So should British sports adopt a far tougher interventionist approach to eating disorders? Ed Warner was chair of UK Athletics from 2007 until 2017.
I think it's a great idea. A lot of money goes into elite sport in Britain. A very, very small proportion of that devoted to a system of health checking of that nature, I think would be money well spent.
And money might just be part of the problem. Since 1997, cash from the National Lottery Fund has revolutionised elite British sport. The money is delivered by a government organisation, UK Sport. They award funding to individual sports based mostly on how many medals they win at the Olympic and Paralympic Games and how many medalists they develop. In the 23 years since they were set up, Team GB has been transformed, jumping from 36th on the medal table at the 1996 Olympics to second, only behind the USA at the 2016 Rio Olympics. But the flip side of these targets is that when teams don't meet them, they are penalised. GB Badminton, for example, lost all of its funding for 2 years in 2016 after a poor performance at the 2012 Olympics, despite a bronze medal win in Rio. Some believe that this winner-takes-all mentality may have had unintended consequences for athletes' welfare. Ed Warner has seen firsthand the impact this can have.
I've seen intense pressure placed on coaches and on their athletes to get onto a funding list and then to get onto a British team. If someone says to you, you're not quite ripped enough, you're not quite conditioned enough, you're eating too much, that'll make a tenth of a second's difference in 100 metres. You might be tempted because you want to succeed. A lot more work has to be done before ultimately I think we have a system which really does get the best out of our athletes without brutalising them. If you're going to have a system with limited funds, they have to be distributed somehow. I personally think there's a little too much focus on a winner-takes-all mentality. You've got to win a medal. UK Sports has to encourage the governing bodies to believe that judgments will be formed on them on something other than just medals.
UK Sport is currently awaiting the findings of an independent report into a number of allegations of abuse made by gymnasts, including concerns about eating disorders within the sport. Dame Catherine Granger is chair of UK Sport. She is one of Britain's most celebrated Olympians, having won 5 rowing medals and has trained with Team GB's rowing team. So does she think that the pressure to achieve medals for funding is contributing to culture issues across British sport? So, Catherine, many athletes will be thinking that there's absolutely no compromise. It's a winner-take-all situation. And there's no flexibility. We want medals, and that's the most important thing. Is that true?
Well, we're in high-performance sport. I think athletes want medals, you and I wanted medals, coaches want medals. But is that the only thing that matters? Absolutely not. How those medals are won are crucial and will be looked at as much as what the medals are won. If there's an environment where it's feeling uncomfortable and it's feeling people are being pushed into situations they are not comfortable to be in, they can speak out and there are places to go that they can talk about it and it will be addressed.
But UK Sport's own research shows that athletes don't always believe problems will be addressed. In September this year, they released a survey showing only around half of athletes believe there are consequences to inappropriate behaviour. So surely you personally can't be happy with that's how they feel?
No, I wouldn't be happy with athletes not being happy with the consequences. And I think there's a big piece of work to be done on sometimes people won't know what the consequences necessarily have been, but it still means with that number of athletes not being happy about the consequences, then there's a risk that you don't have the trust in the system.
How confident are you that an athlete in the environment we're in today, they're worried about their eating disorders, they should be able to approach anybody at any particular stage? Are you confident that they can do that without being judged?
I want to work in a world of sport where any athlete could speak out at any point about any issue. Would I say we're in that place right now? I think from a lot of the stories we've heard recently, there's a lot of athletes who still aren't comfortable about speaking out. And I think what we need to do is, as difficult as it is to hear some of the really negative stories that you hear about athletes having experienced in their sporting careers, I hate that they exist and those stories have happened, but I want to know about them. I still think the vast majority have had a very fulfilling, brilliant time. But for those ones who haven't had that opportunity, then we need to address why not. And the more we hear about the issues that are there, the more we hear the challenges, the more they hear about the blocks to having athletes having a positive experience, the more we can address them.
Is there any punishment that can go to a particular sport if they don't adhere to these principles that you're talking about?
If, in worst case scenario, if a sport wasn't to meet the right standards that are involved in the funding agreements that we have with them all, the ultimate thing that UK Sport could do is withdraw funding from a sport. It's very rarely used, but I think one of the biggest things is that to work in partnership with the sport.
In the face of criticism of its funding model, UK Sport has said that after the Tokyo Olympics, it will change how it awards cash to individual sports, saying that success won't just be based on their medal performance.
I think what you see increasingly is not just that the performance are still key, it's still about really wanting to see inspirational moments through Olympic and Paralympic success. That will always be the heart of what we try and invest in. We want to get to the place where every athlete comes into the high-performing system, however long they can stay in it for. They might achieve every dream they've ever wanted to, they might not. We can't all achieve everything we hope for, that's the sad truth. But they still leave at the end of however many years they've managed to stay in it, saying, do you know what, I'm better for being in that time.
I realise how lucky I am that I am now well. For too long, it feels like British sport has turned a blind eye to eating disorders, and with a recent medal success, it's easy to see why. Next year, hopefully, there will be an Olympic Games in some shape or form. In the meantime, Britain's sporting authorities have an opportunity to really face up to eating disorders and take action.
For details of organisations which offer advice and support with eating disorders, go online to bbc.co.uk/actionline.